So welcome. So excuse me, probably we should wait several minutes for the AD, Brian, to come. You will go over this.
I've done the write-up. I thought I should get to this. I just checked it.
But we don't have to go over this.
No, I need to change the status.
Right now. Okay, thank you. Secret start. You have to wait for a while. Okay. Okay, we can start. So thanks for waiting. I think we can start. So welcome to LWIG session at Prague Hill. So let's recap some logistics of the IETF before we start the discussion. First is the note well. You should be aware that your contribution to IETF, they can make this public available. So that's not well. And we need 1 minute takers. Any volunteers? Okay, thank you very much, Matthias. So so because we also have the tool of Etherpad available on the tools IETF.org, so you can actually start the editing there, and everybody can check that page to see if your comments or questions have been recorded correctly. If it did not, so you can just make the accordingly modifications. And we have passed through so we already got the brochure back. That's very good. Anybody who has not signed this? Anybody else? So yeah, this is the overview of this working group. So we have some activities finished and ongoing, or something even expelled. So for the terminology draft, we already finished the work and published it. And we have several drafts which is under sharing. So first one is the IKV2 minimal draft. We are in sharing this document. I think we have some email conversation with Carol, but
Yeah, so there's no assigned shepherd at the moment, but I can take that role, and I'll update the status.
Okay, cool. So for the LWIG senator drafts from ARI, we have done with the write-up. So I think we will submit it.
So just to add to that, I thought I'd submitted it for publication, but it didn't actually change the state for some reason, and it's just told me I didn't have the intended status on it. So I've now submitted that for publication. Okay.
Thanks. So we have other three documents. One is the LWIG COEP from a number of COEP contributors. So we have many discussion this how we move forward this draft. Either we go through to working group last call, or we can wait for more contributions to collect. And then we have the LWIG energy efficient draft from Carlos. We will have some discussion today, and we will also want to know how to move this document forward. And we also have one working group document which is on TLS minimal implementations, but unfortunately this document has expired. Probably if any of the authors here, we also want to listen, but also to know how we move forward. So, and based on that, we have this agenda. So after I finish this basic introduction, we will go actually there's two documents. We have more time, we can discuss in the TLS minimal document. So any question for the agenda? Okay. So I will go to the COEP document, but this time I didn't solicit the presentation slides from the authors, because all of this document has been presented in LWIG for several times in the previous months. So I think the people who ought to know the background of this document have already got the idea in the document. So we will discuss how we move forward this document. So Matthias, could you hand over discussion to you? Thank you.
Yes, so last time I presented the status of the document, and I again tried to get more feedback. I sent out some questionnaires. The responses were 0. So I got responses that, yeah, we have an implementation, but there was nothing to add to this. I met with Olaf and we worked on some more additions, some fixes. We also improved it together with Carsten. So we have a quite good state in there, so it covers the basic points. In general, it was quite nice to have this document still open, to add issues that are coming up now, because only now we have more and more complex scenarios and applications coming up, where we actually see where we need more guidance. And so on the one hand, it would be nice to keep it open to collect these. On the other hand, I learned from Carsten that we might ship this before March 2016. So since it's all valid what's in there, maybe we can start the working group last call to have another, I don't know, try to get some more feedback on it. So I hope the working group last call will trigger some comments and feedback. And then, as I said, ship this beginning of next year.
So any comments, questions? So actually, you raised two options. One is to keep the document open for a while, and the other is to ship it before some deadline.
I wouldn't call it options. It's an idea. So that's the nice part. So whenever there is currently something coming up, because now we see the actual issues and where we need guidance. So that's nice to put it in here. But the other thing is we have kind of this deadline that something should happen at some point. So that's why it's better to ship it. And that's what I want to do. And then we could have some kind of living document in core, for instance, to collect the more complex things.
Brian Haberman, and I have some number of questions. I'm not sure how many to count. So I'm assuming that the folks over in core have reviewed this?
Yes, so there's a group where we are collaborating on this, and a lot of things that haven't been specifically or haven't been specific enough in RFC 7252 went into this document. So we collected these clarifications here, how to use it properly to eliminate misunderstandings. That went in there, and that was the main purpose of this document. Okay, and just so I understand, this March 2016 deadline is just a line in the sand, or is there something driving that date? So I heard there might be some organizational changes, and so it's not clear how this working group, for instance, will continue. And so before losing this completely, there should be some outcome so that we can publish it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question for you. Could you ask some experts to review the documents before the working group last call or during the working group last call?
So, well, I could add some experts and approach them directly to get some additional input. There are already multiple people working on this document, but I try to find more people who can work on this. Problem was I have been asking for feedback for so long that I don't know who I should approach.
So, chair hat off. This is the kind of perennial issue with the whole LWIG thing. It's like it's all about getting implementation experience and recommendations for lightweight stuff, but it is very difficult to prize that information out of people. So we appreciate the work you've done, very very much so, but others obviously aren't following your suit and giving the same sort of information. So I personally don't know whether it's best to kind of keep this document open and hope that in the future we will get some contributions like yours, or whether we just close it with your contributions and say document done. I don't know what the best solution is personally, but my concern is that we just aren't getting the feedback from people, and it'd be really nice to get that. I don't know how we can prize it out of them. We can't force people to give feedback. If they don't want to give feedback, they won't give it. Everyone knows it's useful, this information, but it's really a question of people spending time and doing that work.
Simon, I promise I'll read it this time, and I'll give you feedback within the next month. Promise.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Yes.
So, any volunteers to review the document? Okay, thank you. Okay, cool. Probably always is the case that during the working group last call you can get more comments and views from the experts.
Just one more point. I think to Brian's point, that I think there is a distinction from people who, having implemented COAP, realize there are issues with the specification, and clarifications are needed, I think that's distinct from lightweight implementation guidance as well. So I think I agree there's a bit of an overlap, but I think there may also need to be that information in the core working group regarding clarifications, and then that gets fed into the specifications.
So Robert, one other thing that just came to my mind is that we could ask the Art ADs who originally had the apps directorate review the CoAP specification to come back and do an early review of this one, because they'll at least have the institutional knowledge of what CoAP is doing and is supposed to do. And so that may be a request that we could make as well. That would get you another set of eyes on it.
Maybe a question from my side. Is there kind of a plan for this working group, longer or midterm, let's say?
We're discussing that in this session.
Okay. So so the plan would be to do working group last call in Japan? Before?
Before that.
Before that. Oh, yeah, prepared for Japan. Yeah. Okay.
Arkeran Eriksson. One quick, I noticed there's no security. Security considerations to be done. That's fine, but like you don't touch upon security at all. I was wondering, is that explicitly decided to be out of scope, or should something be there?
Yeah, there was this other document, TLS minimal, and there's now also work that happened in the DICE profile where a lot of this knowledge went into. So how to read or implement the specifications of TLS or in specific DTLS to make it lightweight. So I would keep this on the protocol of CoAP and having the security, it's a clean layer below it and have documents for that.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I'm always happy if there's feedback that, hey, I found this super way to optimize it, and it might be something like a cross-layer optimization, but if it's for CoAP S, would be fine. So.
Shahid from 6 Swedish ICT. I have a follow-up question. I didn't read the draft, so I don't know if you already have something on security, but it would be good to have something to how you connect CoAP with DTLS. Some guidelines. What are your experience with this implementation, or Olaf's experience with the implementation? I mean, how you interface with between CoAP and DTLS from the implementation guideline point of view. If it's already there, that's great. But a very quick browse showed me that it's not there. Because we did implement, DTLS and CoAP. We did some hack. But it's good to have something concrete in this document from the CoAP perspective, what you want from the DTLS, or how someone could, provide these interfaces between.
So some experience I could provide is what is happening in the Californium framework where we have this DTLS implementation. So it's not lightweight, but we had the problem there. So what's the best API to manage the security parameters from your CoAP implementation? And this could be something that's fed in here. And then to make it more lightweight, maybe there's something from Tiny DTLS that Olaf could provide.
Olaf Bergman. So there's some work currently going on in trying to define an API for libcoAP that supports several DTLS stacks, such as OpenSSL or Tiny DTLS, but that hasn't stabilized yet, and therefore I couldn't yet come up with text for that. So maybe within the next week there will something be happening, and we should then talk about that.
That would be great, because that makes this draft from the security perspective complete, I would say.
I mean, lining out the considerations is already a good input. I mean, it's not normative, so we don't specify the API here. It's talking about, okay, what are the different options, and maybe add some pros and cons. And of course, it could be more an educational guess if you know, okay, this turned out the best, and say, okay, we should go this way. But as I said, the consideration of it is already helpful.
Good, thanks.
So, Brian Haberman, there's one point to keep in mind here, is that we're documenting what people have done. So we're not going to be held to the, you must describe how this thing is secure, right? So if somebody hasn't built security around it, then it's just an informative discussion of what might be done. But the purpose of the working group itself was to document things that had been done.
Agree.
I would plus one to the last one, that it might be useful to add this additional security, because as a co-author of the TLS minimum, we don't say anything about the interface with the co-op layer. And I've struggled myself, I try to understand what's normally done by others. Maybe it's nice to document somewhere what's the interface that's being done normally.
Okay, so I read this as a plus one. We should describe the API, how the co-op implementation should leverage DTLS.
Not should, how it's done nowadays, or are they done differently, or?
Yeah, okay, we don't say should, it should be done like this, or we did it like this way, and it looked like that.
Yeah, thank you.
So, by the way, do you have an implementation of CoApp plus DTLS?
Yeah, so that's what I meant. It's in Californium, but that's not specifically lightweight. I mean, the protocol itself is lightweight, but it's meant for less constrained systems. But kind of the information we have to pass, it's the same lesson. So what do you have to provide to DTLS, and is it better that you configure it, or you provide something that, security information provider that you hand in there? And as I said, so this knowledge from there can then be put in context with tiny DTLS. So we have something we have done, and also the aspects how this looks like in constraint implementations.
Okay. Yeah, we did implement actually CoApp plus DTLS on constrained devices. We think it's a hack, but maybe that's the obvious way to do. So I could provide some feedback on this topic.
Yeah, maybe even some text.
Yeah, I could do that. I mean, we have text. I mean, we have something which is not published yet, but we did implement this, and we have some experience how to do. But we are not super happy about that. But maybe that's the obvious way to do.
Yeah, I think it fits the criterion. It's something people have done. So.
Okay. So yeah, we'd appreciate your input if you're happy to give it. So.
Arkiran Eriksson. One more. Do you have any numbers on RAM and flash consumption of a minimal implementation?
So I don't have them. I always refer to Shahid's or some colleagues' numbers. It was, I think, 12 kilobytes of RAM and 76 kilobytes of ROM for the full thing.
I don't
and
have.
Contiki.
Yeah, I don't have numbers top of my head, but if you search for LITHE, L-I-T-H-E, so we have this CoApp plus DTLS implementation. It's a paper published on these numbers when we have our experience from implementation of CoApp plus DTLS. So LITHE, IEEE Sensors Journal. LITHE, a secure, lightweight secure CoApp for the Internet of Things. That's the title. Yeah, I can send the link to mailing list. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And can we have those numbers copied, for example, this draft, because it's easier to access drafts than papers quite often. I mean, of course, had a reference to your work on that, but have the numbers here.
Yeah, then we need some sections on in this draft from this experience. So.
Yeah, exactly. It goes hand in hand with the text you provide, and then we also have some numbers that will help other implementers.
Yeah. Sure, I could do that. So I should contact you with them.
Yes, please.
And then another thing, I would be interested in the numbers, like how low can we go? Of course, this was a fully functional stack that does all the bells and whistles. However, if I want to do something very minimal, how low can I go? I know one very small implementation, which is only one very small thing, but something, because quite often when you discuss with people who are not familiar with IP in constrained environments, they always say, no, we can't do IP, we can't do core, we can't fit that in our 10K of RAM or 1K of RAM. I always say, yes, you can. It depends how much you implement. The security is an issue.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't want to write anything about this because it wouldn't say if this actually implements TLS or DTLS correctly, and you can get it small, but how many holes are in there? I cannot answer this.
So has anyone done like very bare bones, super minimal TLS, works only in one case with one set of ciphers, you know? How low can it go? Has anyone done that?
I'm not aware of this. So really trying to push it to the limits.
Okay, so I think
all of DTLS gives you some basic numbers, but I don't aware of any other stable or available DTLS implementation that could do that.
So Tiny DTLS tries to do that, but I think the whole thing could be pushed down a bit more if you're clear on what your application does, so you can optimize specifically for that application.
Okay, would it be possible for you guys to do, I don't know, the classic thermometer use case? I send a value every X seconds, and you know, I need one set of ciphers and all that. You choose the parameters, but just like how low can you go? Some intuition there. It doesn't have to be exact number, but like some intuition.
We can try that.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Matthias. So the same thing we'll do for the LWIG energy efficient draft. So Carlos, please. I forget that you should stand in the pink box.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, let's give a bit of context on the status of the draft. The main idea would be that the draft has been rather stable for a while. Around Honolulu, there were several additions to the draft, both from the authors and also from, based on comments from working group participants, so thanks for this. And then there was some additional new text added after that. So in Dallas, the authors felt that the draft was basically almost ready. So we already asked whether a working group last call could be issued. And then during the meeting, there was a couple of comments from Dominic Bartel, who asked first whether it would be interesting to add a section on the power services, services for power saving in DECT ULE, whether it would be good to add something like that to the document. And also he had some question on whether the DSME mode in 15.4e seemed something to be of interest, whether anyone was planning to implement it, and so on. So as a result of that, the authors of the 6-law draft, focusing on adapting IPv6 over DECT ULE, provided some text, which is now incorporated in the draft, in the energy efficient draft, on the power saving services in DECT ULE. And on the other hand, we polled the working group regarding possible interest on this DSME mode of 15.4e, and there was actually no response. So we assumed that it was not worth adding text on this mode of 15.4e in the draft. So after that, we feel that the authors feel that this document has been pretty stable, and so actually our idea would be to ask again whether it is possible to issue a working group last call for this draft.
So I actually have a proposal, because it's very hard to handle the comments from the last point. So I would like just to refocus on the consensus of the mailing list instead of the comments you received when you finally present this work to the group and receive some spontaneously comments from someone else. I think basically our working group chair can just ignore those comments from the last point and to move things forward. And the point is that if we didn't get the opposition comments from the mailing list, we will ignore those comments from the meetings. Is that work for you?
Sorry, can you repeat again?
So my proposal is that I don't want to ask again
Okay.
the question, the same question again.
Okay.
We will handle this to the mailing list.
Okay.
And if we have established some consensus in previous meetings, we can base on that somehow.
So just to understand from my point of view, so in Dallas, there was a request for some additional work on the DSME. Nothing was forthcoming. Nothing was forthcoming on the mailing list. Is that right? So,
Yeah.
and there was some requests for additional work on. Sorry, what was the other one again?
DECT ULE.
DECT ULE, and you did get some information on that,
Yes.
and that's been included.
Yes.
Okay. So we can assume then, therefore, that there's nothing going to be forthcoming on DSME, and therefore, it's, as you say, in a stable state. So I think we can make the call again for, unless there's any other, if anyone else has any other suggestions to add to this document. Again, that like a lot of the other documents, this it could carry on and on and on, yes, with people coming forward going, oh yes, I've got an idea and things like that. But to some extent, it again suffers from a lack of input generally from people wishing to add to this very useful document, very useful information here. Mm-hmm. So I think we're also at the point with this document that we probably have to say let's just call it a day on this document and take it forward for working group last call.
Okay, cool.
So shall we do it? Can we have a hum from the room? Does everyone agree that we should take this document for working group last call? Hum if you agree. Hum if you don't agree. Okay.
I'm surprised that Carlos didn't hum.
Well, I assume that being an author,
Yes, okay.
yeah.
Implicit hum.
Okay, you have the mic.
And amplified, so.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. So, because we also have the TLS minimal implementation draft. Do you want to state your opinion as the author?
So the TLS minimal draft was used extensively to create a profile draft. That was actually, a lot of text was also used there. So in that sense, that minimal really helped. What we were waiting for was to get the profile draft done so that we can then have some implementations of the profile draft and then see what the values are actually, so what comes out of it. So we were waiting for that kind of stage. Last time, Hannes had some results on the ellipticals that has to still go into the draft. So hopefully we will get an update. I have to talk to Hannes, but I think that's the idea, that we can get something on the profile and ellipticals in.
Okay.
So no timeline. So I'll talk to the quarters and see how fast we can get to.
How different, Shahid from 6 Swedish ICT, how different it is from the profile draft? Or should we need it? I mean, if we have the profile draft.
So the current version only has a lot of PSK and mention about the raw public keys and the public keys and the certificate mode, but not on a constrained environments. So only PSK is on constrained environment. So we need more numbers on the constrained environment. That's what is needed. That's the main difference. And in terms of profile draft, there are a few differences because some of the things like the identity is optional, and I think for PSK and for certificate, I don't remember what was the differences. I remember profile draft clearly. I think it was a depth of the certificate tree that was mentioned. That comes off my head. That would have created a difference, but I don't remember exactly what the differences that would affect the implementation directly right now.
That's the point. I mean, if it's same, the certificates, for example, if it's same for the DTLS and TLS, then it's make no sense to have the additional details here, but could go to, for example, the other draft. But if you have something specific for TLS that's not covered in DTLS minimal draft or profile draft, then those details are useful, very useful here. And if you know some, then we would be happy to. Yeah.
So yeah, there was a presentation Hannes gave in Dallas, which gave a lot of figures. I just don't think those figures have been incorporated in the drafting. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one thing. One of the things that we want to include is also those measurements that we had with different modes that were possible. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that one isn't ready for working group. That's cool.
Okay.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you really want to keep this document open, but please update it. Okay. Otherwise, we cannot handle a document that is expired.
Sorry, quick question. Shahid from 6 Swedish ICT. So, which implementation do you have for TLS?
It's based on a tiny DTLS.
Okay, so it's tiny DTLS. So it's, yeah, I'm a little confused about the name TLS versus DTLS. So.
Well, yeah.
Ours was mainly DTLS.
Yeah.
I think DTLS came in, because we were just discussing the whole thing, but the main implementation was DTLS.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so the performance figures, obviously, they apply to things like the elliptic curve operations, things like that. So it's not really TLS or DTLS specific. Yeah. Basically, for the rest of the session, I'd just like to kind of get a discussion going on the future for LWIG, really, and because the working group's been around for some time now. I think we've certainly produced one very useful RFC 7228. Which has kind of put a very useful framework in place for when we talk about constrained devices. So happy to have produced that one RFC from this working group. I think with some of the other drafts there, it's the idea obviously of LWIG was to try and gather implementation experience, especially sort of in lightweight constrained environments, and to document that so people find it useful when it comes to doing their own implementations. I think the main issue has been, as already mentioned, is actually prizing that information out of people. Again, I want to thank all the people who've actually submitted, all their results, implementation experiences and everything. So it's been very useful, and that exists in the current drafts now. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we could leave these drafts open indefinitely almost and just build up more and more pictures, more and more people actually do implementations and are willing to submit their experiences. We could add those to the documents. On the other hand, that isn't typically how documents work in IETF. They normally come to a logical finish and they get published. So the conundrum is how you have that sort of living document persisting forever and ever effectively in the IETF where they actually want to publish stuff. So I'm not quite sure what the answer is to that. Maybe Brian would be able to help me out there. So,
can you repeat that RFC number?
7228.
Brian Haberman. So I think there's a couple of different ways you could answer that question. The first point I'll make is that typically you don't stand up a working group and then just keep these indefinite internet drafts going on. I mean, it doesn't give sufficient reference. It's not referenceable in a stable way for anybody to to use that information. So I don't see that approach being very feasible. As far as the working group in general goes, there's absolutely nothing wrong with publishing RFCs and then updating those RFCs as new information comes in. But it gets back to the point that you made earlier that requires the working group participants to actually provide that information and provide feedback on it.
Okay. So I guess to turn on that last point, I'd just like to get a feel from the audience as to the usefulness of this group in that respect. And it's a kind of two-way thing. If people in the audience think that it's useful having this group to gather this implementation experience and document it, in the way that Brian suggested, maybe we publish and then update, then obviously it's a kind of two-way thing. Then we have to have that input. If we don't have that input, the working group doesn't really exist, and those documents won't exist. They won't happen. So to some extent, I have to ask you guys to say, if you want this working group to exist, you have to contribute, you have to participate, you have to give us information. And again, I thank everybody who's done that so far. But as you can tell from the volume of traffic on the email reflector, there's generally not a lot of participation. So, and that suggests to me, well, either two things: either people are just reluctant or don't have the time or whatever to provide that information. And I appreciate, it's often a lot of effort to come up with to produce a document, all these figures in. And I appreciate the effort done so far. But on the other hand, if people don't have the time to do it, there's probably little point in continuing with this working group, because we're just not going to get the effort.
I have Shahid from 6 Swedish ICT. I have a little comment on this. For example, right now we have COAP, which is in a ready stage. So we have some implementations. For example, we had 6-ish plug test, 4 different implementations, 93% interoperable. So, that's now becoming an RFC soon. And then maybe the authors have time to write something here. This is, the lightweight implementation group is, the input here is based on what is produced in other IoT groups. And if something is stable there, then that is actually implemented, and then we have more guidelines here.
Yeah, the issue is getting people to actually contribute that information. So, I've been involved in standards for a long time, and yes, you typically find in plug fests and things like that, people bring their implementations, they interoperate, and the spec gets improved due to the comments from the interops and things like that. But one thing that's rarely discussed is actually how they've actually done an implementation. And a lot of it, in many cases, it's proprietary information, it's confidential. They don't want to give away their secrets, especially commercial organizations. So I completely understand that, but nevertheless, that's the way it is. And therefore, to try and, you can't force people to give that information. It's in their interest to go to interops and make sure they work with everybody else, but they're still not going to tell you, oh, well, we use this really clever mechanism in our stack to save 10K of code space or something.
Yeah, I agree. For example, in this plug test, OpenWSN, they have 6-ish implementation, and that's open source, open license. Mm-hmm. And the guy is very active. Thomas maybe sitting here, Thomas Vitini. Mm-hmm. And I would definitely encourage him to write a draft for this, because that will be really useful. Because that's something which is now close to become a standard, and that's the IETF IoT standard, like Ripple CoAP. If someone says Ripple CoAP, and then the third, I would say 6-dish. And then it's great to have the guidelines here, but I will push him. At least I will ask him.
And I agree. And I think it also helps for them to sell, and obviously it's open source, but sell their own stack. Because if they can say, well, we have here are some figures we published in LWIG, which shows how brilliant it is, go ahead and use it. So it helps proliferate their own work to some extent.
Agree.
Sandeep here. I would like to add, apart from just showing what implementations can be done in lightweight, what also happened with TLS and DTLS was we also showed what the real issues were, why it was not easy to implement in lightweight. That also helped the profile thing. Mm-hmm. So that kind of work would also be very nice, because that's how we started with the DTLS profile thing, the DTLS minimal stuff, that we were first showing what the problems were. So maybe that kind of work also is nice. Maybe it doesn't end up as a draft, as complete RFC, but does help the other processes here.
Yeah, I also have 2 comments to the question. Before that, I want to put my chair's hat off. So based on my experience of running this working group for almost 4 years, I have 2 feelings that's very compelling. The first one is that people seems very reluctant to share their implementation experience, especially for the people who work for some companies. But I also discussed with this point with Yari Arko serials before, and he had made very good point is that people who want to share will make their implementation more visible, and people who don't want to share their experience will just stop where it is. So I think that's a very good point. For example, we have the contributors from the CoAP community, and especially from some open source implementations. And those who really contribute and share their experience really make their implementations visible to a large audience, instead of just making their implementations just open to a small group. And the second comment is that because we are working on the experience that's related to the other working group, for example, 6LoWPAN, or now is 6Low, or also we have the RAW, or even CoAP. But the problem for us to move very slow is that basically our implementation is actually involves from their specifications. CoAP has some RFC published, but still they're evolving. So the implementers like Matthias still have the problems that it's kind of hard to get the sufficient information to make the very valuable implementation guidance document. But it is always a good idea to keep this such document open, and we can make this as a point to collect more experience. And from that point of view, we can have this working group virtually exist, but we don't have to meet every time somehow. That's also a way to move forward. Yeah, that's 2 cents. You can judge.
Yeah, I think if we can agree a mechanism by which we can release documents and update them, and we don't have to meet every time, and we can provide a vehicle for people to give that input and to give their implementation feedback and guidance, then I don't see any issue with the working group persisting. But we need to have that input from people. Otherwise, it's one of these self-fulfilling things. The working group will succeed and everyone will benefit if people contribute. If nobody contributes, nobody's going to benefit.
Yes, certainly.
Stating the obvious, but yeah.
Ari Keränen, regarding getting the contributions, I was wondering, has there been some outreach efforts? Because of course, the group of people sitting here on the mailing list is kind of small, so outreach efforts are outside of that group to get the information.
Yeah, I had done some outreach to which some people from Berkeley for the Open WSN, but this time because we have the hackathon, they were here. But previously I write them emails, but they don't attend the regular IETF meetings, so that's a basic issue for them. And also very long before I also contacted Contiki people, and I get the similar response somehow.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have a silver bullet, but if you can come up with some, I don't know, incentives to get that information, buy them beers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea initially was a kind of field of dreams thing. You know, if we build the group, everyone will come and provide information. Everyone's going to love it. But you know, there's something obviously missing, which isn't making that happen. Whether it's beer, okay, beer, right? Maybe it's just the beer. Yeah, we'll just give everybody beer. Yeah.
I'll give it a shot.
We could lie to them. We have a working group named Beer.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Bit of whiskey or something.
Also, we have the beat and bites, and previously in the Nanog we have the beer and cheers.
Bits and bytes and beer. Okay. So I just wanted to respond to one of the suggestions about, the working group as a whole. There's a couple of different things that we've done differently in the last year or so at the IESG. We've chartered working groups that are designed not to meet, so that everything is virtual. Those groups are generally meant to be very short-lived. So one of them is supposed to be done in under a year, but that doesn't mean that we can't do something similar here. My only concern is that it still requires people to contribute and participate, which, as Robert and others have pointed out, really hasn't occurred. So I would be a little concerned with that, but that's one option. And to me, that really just looks like a working group that's in hibernation. The working groups, the mailing list stays around, people can use it to discuss, and all the infrastructure is in place if there's a need to push a document forward. So that's an option. But I'm going to reiterate what you guys have been saying is that keeping the working group alive means that there's more than just 2 or 3 people going, oh, hey, look, right?
Yes, I agree. I can't agree with you more because for the option you just proposed, and also for your concerns about the contributions, further contributions from the implementers, I don't have much concern because we have the other working groups working very well. It's CoAP and 6LO or RO or ACE. So
I guess on that note, it seems feasible that you could encourage the sort of LWIG work within the working groups themselves, maybe.
Okay, Robert, I didn't give you permission to read my mind because that's why I was coming up here, is to say it's not that infeasible for people to identify which things have been done, and if they're willing to document it, it goes into the working group where that protocol lives. So yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. And if people wanted a coordination mechanism for that, it's not uncommon for us to close a working group and leave the mailing list open, right? So the LWIG mailing list would exist. People could say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and you guys say, great, let me see. You review it, and then you send them off to core or TCPM or HTTP BIS, whatever.
I mean, I think the main advantage of that is you probably get more input on the mailing list because those mailing lists are much more active and there's more people subscribing to them, and therefore you're probably more likely to get participation. Okay. So I guess I'd like to get a get a sense from the people in the room. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So there was a comment before that this working group will be maybe closed before the next IETF. Did we decide on this?
No, I think we'd certainly want to, all the documents in the pipe, we'd want to, get those published. So there's five or so drafts already in the pipe, so we want to get those published.
Okay, so what is the status of working group now? I mean, what did we decide? So it will be open for...
So, well, that's what I was trying to get a sense for where we should proceed. So if there's a consensus to close the working group, I would propose that obviously we clear the documents in the pipe, get those published, and that's it.
If the consensus is to keep the group alive.
So that's one possibility. Another possibility is so I think there's probably two other possibilities, and again just ideas. Possibility two is to kind of have it as this marshalling working group, as whatever you want to call it, where people can say, hey, I'm doing something to LWIG, and then we go to core. This is in your interest. Can you discuss it in your working group? So that's possibility two. So the working group exists, but as a kind of mailing list only. We don't really meet, and if there are implementation experiences, there may be a slot in the core meeting, for example, to talk about implementation. And the third solution is just carry on as we are, really, and continue to do the work here.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think.
Is that a reasonable summary of? Is there any other possibility?
No.
I think
you got them all.
So
we may have or might have chances to meet in next IETF.
Yeah.
As a
possible, yes, because I doubt we'd have closed all the documents by then. So I think the next IETF will still exist for sure.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I'd still like to get a hum on those three if possible.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get a hum for whether people think we should close LWIG after we've got all the documents out. So can I have a hum on that? Oh, sorry. Okay. So the three option number one, close LWIG after we get all the current drafts out. Then it doesn't exist anymore. Option two is to continue LWIG as a kind of low activity working group where the mailing list still exists, but if there's any real work happening in the future in terms of people collecting implementation experience, it gets dealt with in the appropriate working group. So if it's about COAP, it'll be done in core. If it's about TLS, it'll be done or DTLS, it'll be done in TLS. That's option two. Option three is carry on as we are. So basically, people with implementation experience drafts will get taken into LWIG, they'll be pushed through LWIG, there'll be LWIG drafts becoming RFCs through LWIG.
Is that too complicated?
Is it?
I just want to compress it to two options.
Okay, so keep it. Well, no, I don't know. So, look, there's two options. It's close it or keep it going. Yeah, those are the two options. If you just want to limit it to two.
Yeah, but the mode was quite good to distinguish between.
Well, exactly. That's why I think I think three is not unreasonable.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd still prefer to see option 1A and 1B. But we'll keep it going. At full strength, if you like. Full strength as is now.
And is the option B keep it only as a mailing list?
And 1B is mailing list only. We don't really meet. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's do it that way.
And I guess as it now, I guess at least what I would like to see as now, but much more active, and I guess everyone would like to see. But are we? I mean, do we have any tools for making that happen? Besides the peer.
I don't think I caught all of your question. Was it, do we have enough ability to do 1A?
What I was asking, I guess I was saying, I think most would agree that we'd like to keep 1A. Not as now, but keep as a working group, but more active. That would be the optimal.
Okay, so almost
There's a lot of nodding here.
Right.
That's what I meant, sort of full strength. I know that if anything, make it more active. Yeah.
But then, of course, that would mean clearly we would need something to do that. Do we have some tools in mind to achieve that?
So I have two answers because you actually asked two questions. One is from the IESG AD perspective is one of the things that I would really like to see is more people actually actively being involved in these discussions. And that, I mean, if you go back and look at the LWIG archive, I'm pretty sure I saw some crickets running across there a couple of times. As far as the tools question, I think that's more of the people participating here as to how much influence do they have or how many contacts do they have in places where they might be able to get that kind of information to come into the working group. Right? Because there's really not a whole lot that the IETF as an organization can do to do that, but the people in this room who do have contacts are the ones that really need to be doing that kind of outreach and information gathering.
Hi, Oleg Ham. I cannot do any commitments, but I know there are a couple of guys in this room who are implementing a full 6-LoWPAN stack during the last, I don't know, 5 months, 6 months, and I think within the right community, and I think we can discuss internally and maybe we can come up with some document about lightweight implementation of a multi-threading 6-LoWPAN stack. I don't want to do any commitments, sure. But I can try to convince some people to write something about this, and I think that would be in perfect scope for LWIG more than for any other working group, because it's not only a Ripple implementation, only a 6-LoWPAN implementation, but a full stack. So I can try to convince some people.
Shahid from 6. I can push my colleague who has 6-stage implementation. He's super enthusiastic about this. So I will try with the 6-stage, and I hope that he will write some experiences as a draft here as well.
Okay.
So we'll quickly try and do these hums then. So hum for 1A. Keep it going, but try and make it better and get more input. Who would like to see it that way? So hum for 1B, toning it down and just keeping it mailing list only. Thing. 2. Sorry? And option 2, hum for closing it after we ship the documents. Okay. That's pretty clear then. We keep going full steam ahead. Right.
Okay, time is up.
Pardon the snarky comment, but that's the most input I've heard from this working group in about 3 months.
well, that's and just to follow up on that, I heard your hum, so please contribute. Make it worthwhile.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Close the meeting.
If you haven't signed the blue sheets.
Thank you very much. Sounds very positive.
Yes. So meet at 7 in the lobby?
Yes.
I just need to drop
7 in the registration device, that's kind of in the lower low. Yeah.
Right. See you tomorrow. Okay.